Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. Wagid's math class. Last lesson, we talked about scientific notation, how do we read them, and how do we write them in standard form. Let's review that. Scientific notations are numbers written with a factor multiplied by a power of 10. As an example, 6.2 is the factor, and the factor has to be more or equal to 1 and less than 10. Multiplied by 10 to the power of an exponent. If that exponent is negative, it only means this is a small number between 0 and 1. If the exponent is positive, that means it's a huge number more than 10. Now, what if we need to write the number from scientific form notation to standard form? Showing all the digits. We did that by moving the decimal and fill out empty spaces with zeros. If you have a negative exponent, that means you have a very small number between 0 and 1. If you have a positive exponent, that means you have a bigger number, more than 10. For today's lesson, we will be writing numbers in scientific notation from standard form. Write the number in scientific notation, 25 million. How do you write that in scientific notation? It's already in standard form. As a reminder, scientific notation has a factor more or equal to 1 and less than 10, multiplied by a power of 10. 25 million is a huge number. I don't want to confuse you with going left and right, but follow those easy steps and you will never get it wrong. The number is greater than 10, so I need it between 1 and less than 10. Which means you need to move the decimal to the front of the leading non-zero digit. So look for the leading non-zero digit and underline that number. We read the numbers from left to right. So what's the first digit that is not 0? It's the 2. So this is the leading non-zero digit. Now, there isn't a decimal, so put a decimal and now move it to the front of that 2 and write the number. So you end up with 2.5. Don't write any zeros because that's the power of 10. Multiplied by, now I need to write the power of 10. Count how many digits did you move the decimal to the front of the leading non-zero digit. You moved it 7 times. So now use positive exponent because positive exponents is an indication for bigger numbers. So you multiply it by 10 to the power of 7, and that's how you write the number from standard form to scientific notation form. Now, how about this number? Write it in scientific notation. Watch how this number is a very small number between 0 and 1, right? As a reminder, scientific notation should have a factor between 1 and less than 10 times a power of 10. So your first step always is to look for the leading non-zero digit. We always read from left to right, so read from left and look for the first leading non-zero digit, which is the 5. Underline that. Now move the decimal, there is already a decimal there, move it to the front of that number 5 and write the number down, which is 5.06. Don't write any of the zeros because that's the power of 10. Now multiply it by a power of 10. This time I will use negative exponent because this number is between 0 and 1. And remember, negative exponent is an indication that the number is small between 0 and 1. So how many times did you move the decimal to the front of the 5? You moved it 4 times, so multiply that by 10 to the power of negative 4. And that's the scientific notation from standard form. Here's the last example for today's lesson. The distance from the sun to different planets are shown below. Order the planets from closest to the furthest away from the sun. Here's the planets with all the numbers and the distance from the sun. Since we are looking for the closest to the sun first, that means the least distance from the sun, which means the smallest number. So which number is the smallest number? We know Mercury is written in standard form. So change that to scientific notation in order to compare it with the other planets. You know you need to move the decimal to get a factor between 1 and less than 10. So look for the leading non-zero digit, which is 5, and write the number of 5.79. How many times did you move the decimal to the front of the 5? You moved it 7 times, so times 10 to the power of 7. Now I'm able to compare these numbers and see which one is the smallest. First, look at the power of 10. The smallest exponent, the smaller the exponent, the less digit the number has, which means the smaller the number. And I know 10 to the power 7 is smaller than 10 to the power 9, 8, or 8. So I know Mercury is the closest to the Sun. It has the least digits, which means the least number. Now, the second planet, what do I do? Because you have power of 9, power of 8, power of 8. I know power of 9 is going to be the furthest away because it has the most digits, which means the biggest number. So now I need to choose between those two, which is Mars and Venus. So second thing, look at the factor if the exponents are the same and look for the smallest number. Is it 1.08 or 2.27? The smaller number, that means the least distance from the Sun. So you got Venus of 1.082 times 10 to the power of 8. Then it goes Mars 2.279 times 10 to the power of 8 kilometer. And the last number would be, or planet would be Saturn, which is the furthest away from the Sun. So in conclusion for today's lesson, when you're writing number from standard form to scientific notation form, look for the two clues. Is the number between 0 and 1, which means is it a very small number, or is the number more than 10? If the number is between 0 and 1, then move the decimal to the leading non-zero digit and use negative exponent. But if the number is greater than or equal to 10, move the decimal to the leading non-zero digit and then use positive exponent. So you use positive exponent for numbers more than 10 and you use negative exponent for numbers between 0 and 1. And look for the leading non-zero digit. That's where you need to move the decimal. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you so much for subscribing, liking, and commenting on my videos. Have a great day. I will see you next time.